As the sun started to rise along the horizon, Lily finally started to wake up from her restless slumber. Looking around, she found herself within the igloo and not locked out of the game. It was now that she started to panic a little bit. She was currently unable to log out of the game. It didn't make sense to her as she couldn't open any pause menu or saw anything that would constitute an exit button. This wouldn't have been worrying to her, had it not been about 24 hours since she started to play the game. It had been 24 hours, yet not a full day had passed. When the game started, it had been around noon as the sun had almost been directly overhead. Yet Lily was sure that it had been nearly 24 hours, yet it was now only the sun was rising. Panic started to set in, which was amplified by her tired mental state, though she wasn't in this state for long as soon as she felt her hunger rise. She quickly got up from her bed and started to search her igloo for food, but she found nothing within it. She was about to head out and see if she could find some sort of store, but then realized that she would have nothing to pay the food with. Lily struggled for a good long few minutes before realizing that Lupina probably had food or could help her easily gather some. Once she realized, though, she quickly jumped out of bed and got into warm winter clothing. Without double checking to see if she was heading in the correct direction towards Lupina's cave, she ran off into the forest. Her panic was causing her to make very rash decisions, and because of that, she didn't try to slow down and try to retrace her steps from the day prior. She simply ran through the forest, relying on instinct only, as her brain was cluttered with other information that Lily deemed more important. Her panic of not logging out and being unable to solve her hunger was all she could think about. She ran for around an hour before realizing her fatal mistake. Last time it only took about half an hour to get back at her walking speed. Yet she had been running an hour straight and had arrived at Lupina's house. Looking around, she couldn't recognize anything that she could see. There was no water or seemingly higher elevation that could house a cliff nor cave. Without knowing what else to do, Lily called out to anyone who was listening, hoping for any sort of response. Though no matter how much she screamed out loud, no response was heard. Soon her throat became irritated with all her yelling and she was forced to stop as it physically hurt to yell any longer. Now, with no other option, she started to retrace her footsteps back to frozen Alps. But her hunger was starting to grow at a rapid pace. She wasn't sure what would happen if she didn't eat soon, but from what she was understanding, it would be bad. Knowing this, she looked for anything edible as she walked back to the town. After about 15 minutes of walking, she saw a bush of what looked to be small, dark blue, flattened spheres. She was pretty sure that these berries were blueberries. Since she remembered blueberries to be safe to eat in real life, she assumed they'd be safe to consume in game as well. So she started to grab handfuls of them and quickly ate them, and soon she had fulfilled her hunger enough for her to try and regain her ground. She once again started to follow her tracks in the snow to try and hopefully find her way back. But as she walked, the tree started to twist in weird ways. It wasn't all too noticeable at first, as it just looked like the tree swaying in the wind, but soon the tree started to bend in front of Lily. There was no pattern to these bending trees. It was as if someone was making the world spin around Lily. After walking a bit more, the world started to darken. It wasn't like the world was gaining more shadow, but it was as if someone was turning up the opacity on a pure black filter. It took a few minutes, but soon Lily's vision became pure black and she felt something soft and cold hit the entire front of her body. It was then that she realized what was happening. She had started hallucinating, then had promptly passed out in the snow. Her consciousness wasn't in the darkness long before a light could be seen. At first it was blurry, but it came into focus at a moderate pace. When Lily could see everything in its entirety, she could tell right away that she wasn't awake. It appeared to be some sort of dream, as she knew whatever she was seeing couldn't have been a memory. She was herself from her perspective, but she had stuff on herself that Lily couldn't comprehend. The most noticeable was the hilt of a sword that looked like a mixture of a futuristic pistol and a lightsaber, but also had pouches and other stuff she didn't have in the game. This dream Lily was slowly walking through the frozen forest of Mount Shivering, almost as if she was watching something that the real Lily couldn't see. This sneaking around continued for a few minutes before the dream Lily stopped and seemed to duck down into some bushes. She then held out her hand in a direction as light seemed to project to some unknown direction. Although the real Lily couldn't see the destination of this light, she for some reason knew that it was illusion magic that projected several wolves into certain areas of the forest. The dream Lily then picked up a rock and threw it in the direction she pointed the light. It wasn't long before a loud thud could be heard from the rock hitting a tree, which was followed by rustling that quickly got louder. It was only a few seconds before the real Lily saw what was going on. The dream Lily had used her illusions to guide a pathway for a Shivarian deer to follow, and used the rock to startle it into running. The deer was directed to run right beside the bush that Dream Lily was using as cover. When it ran by, she picked up her blaster hilt mixture weapon, and as soon as she held it in a safe direction, Dream Lily's hand transferred mana into the weapon. Out of the came a long, thin blade of pure light. She then quickly slashed at the deer's neck with her blade, and the head went flying as the body collapsed onto the ground. A clean and painless kill. After a few moments without the body moving, Dream Lily once again transferred mana into the blade to turn it off. She then walked over to the body of the now dead deer to pick the body up. This should be the last one I need to hunt as long as Lupina gets her quota. I hope those that Lana invited from the scriptorium enjoy our holiday feast, Dream Lily said as she started to drag the deer in a similar way that Lupina did when the real Lily met her. As she walked through the snowy forest, she started to do actions that confused the real Lily, like throwing powder across the ground and marking trees. It seemed methodical, but the real Lily couldn't understand why it was being done. This continued on for 20 to 25 minutes before a new sound could be heard. The dream Lily didn't seem to think anything of this sound as they appeared to look around with curiosity, but the real Lily felt an immense evil resonating from this sound. It was almost like a lullaby that to most could sound rather light and cheerful, but if you knew what it actually was, you'd be scared every time it was played. A sort of Schrodinger's cat of a song, but instead of a cat being alive and dead, it was both cheerful and haunting. Dream Lily started to head in the direction of the song, but the closer she got to the source of the sound, the more of an evil presence the real Lily felt. It was starting to become unbearable, but she couldn't scream or flail in pain as all she could do was watch, unable to alter this dreamscape. After a minute of the torture, they arrived and saw the source of the music. It was a rather short woman with pale skin who had similar clothing to other clerics in the Guardian Tales world, with a blue short cloak and a gold trim that only fell to her elbows. Underneath the cloak was a pure white dress whose skirt only fell to her knee length. She also wore a thin layer of dark gray fabric shaped into pants. The hood of the cloak was down so you could see her silver hair, but looking at her face, she saw that this woman's eyes and hairstyle were Malim Nava's from that time I got reincarnated as a slime, who once had a crossover with Guardian Tales. The one difference between the two characters' hairstyles is the bangs of the woman's hair seemed to fall lower than her eyes, but had split where her eyes were, creating 3 points in her hair, one on either side of her eyes, and one in between them. This woman's face also had the lightning bolt markings that Veldora Tempest had from the same anime. The only reason the real Lily knew these facts was because Ashley had decidedly told her about the crossover between the anime and Guardian Tales when it had happened. After seeing this out-of-place individual who was not dressed for the snowy weather of Mount Shivering, but seemed unbothered by the freezing temperatures, the Dream Lily spoke up. "Hello there, miss. Are you all right? Are you lost?" The woman turned to face the Dream Lily and smiled. When she smiled, the whole dream seemed to glitch out, as if someone was playing a noise filter over both the visuals and her sound. Her mouth then moved as if she was speaking, but the real Lily couldn't hear anything coming from this woman. She couldn't even hear the Dream Lily now, for whatever reason. Though after this unknown woman tried to talk a second time, the real Lily was plagued with flashback-like images. The first image she saw was of this unknown woman holding up an almost dragon-like green and black gas that was roughly the size of a human. Underneath the gas was the body of a gentleman-style plague doctor, and a little ways away was the body of a mermaid with short, dark blue hair and fiery red eyes. The second image saw the woman punching another woman. The cleric woman's fist that was punching this other woman was set ablaze in a pure pink fire of pure energy. The woman being punched had very long hair that was almost slightly dark hazel color. She wore a blue cape with an intricate golden trim around the edges of the cape, had a large amount of soft fur around the top neck area of the cape. On her forehead was a golden crown with 2 animal-like ear outcroppings that each held a blue jewel. She had dark teal eyes and clothes that covered her body on the front that had a giant gradient of white at the top to the sea blue at the bottom. Floating behind her was a large white symbol that glowed a light blue, and floating around her were various different styles and designs of swords. The last image saw the cleric woman badly injured and kneeling in front of a slightly less injured knight. Not just any knight, though. They were the game's protagonist knight that had long blonde hair and emerald green eyes, and wore a more design-focused steel armor. In their hands was a light blue sword whose base shape looked to be a three-sided square. Slightly offset from one of the points with two edges connected was the hilt of the weapon. On the opposite end of the square that had the hilt weapon, coming out of the point that it was only connected to one edge, was a blade that had a triangle-shaped bump halfway down the blade. This sword was pointed directly at the cleric woman's neck. On the cleric woman's face were several cuts that had bled so much that it stained her pale face slightly red around those cuts. Yet a majority of the blood had long since washed away, as all that was left of it was the color that stained her face. After seeing all the images, her body finally woke up and she quickly sat up as if startled. Her breath was heavy, and she was disoriented for a few minutes before she looked around and saw that she was laying on a couch in a bedroom. She quickly recognized it as Lupina's bedroom, and as if to confirm her thoughts, Lupina walked into the room from the hallway that led deeper into the cave. "I see you've finally recovered from your poisoning. Wait here a moment while I get you something," Lupina said, who then left the way she came, which left Lilly a bit confused. As Lilly was left alone, she started to stand up but collapsed onto the cave's solid ground. She then tried to grab onto the couch to push herself up so that she may stand, but it only left her to fall again. It was then that Lupina walked into the room with a bowl full of some sort of steaming soup. No, no. You've eaten something you shouldn't have. You need rest," Lupina said, placing the bowl down on her desk before helping Lilly back onto the couch. Once she was sure that Lilly was secure, she grabbed the bowl once again and handed it to Lilly. "Eat this. It is a stew mixed with medicinal herbs that should help cure your poison faster." Lilly listened and ate the stew, reminiscing on the dream she had. It felt so vivid and real that she was still shaking, even now. It took her a while to eat all the medicinal soup through her shaking, but she did eat it entirely. Lupina smiled while grabbing the empty bowl from Lilly and placing it on the desk. Then she looked over at Lilly. "You should feel better by tomorrow. You ate quite a few daydream berries, a hallucinogenic berry that when consumed in large doses can cause one to out for up to 4 days." Lilly choked when Lupina had said that it can cause someone to pass out for 4 days. "Have I been asleep for 4 days?" "Oh no. You've been asleep only for about a day thanks to the medicine. I found you collapsed about 3 hours from my home. I think it is safe to say you failed your first test." Lupina said that last sentence rather mockingly, but Lilly didn't make any sort of response as they were still recovering. After a few seconds of silence, Lupina once again spoke up. "Anyways, I found a weapon that I think might be perfect for you to use." As she spoke, she took out a weapon that was stained in Lily's memory. It was the hilt that she saw in Dream Lily used to kill the deer. Seeing this, she recoiled backwards, muttering how to herself. It was then that all the pieces started to click in Lily's mind. "Lupina, have you seen any green and black dragon smoke things? Any top hat wearing plague doctors? Or any mermaids with red eyes?" Lily said with urgency. Lupina was taken aback by the sudden change in Lily's demeanor and the randomness of her sentence. "Not personally, but it's nothing a quick search cannot fix," she said, then pulled out her phone out of her pocket and started to tap on it. Lily was so concerned with this puzzle that she was solving that she didn't even realize the phone was out of place in the fantasy setting. Soon, Lupina looked back at Lily. "I have no hit on the plague doctor or the mermaid, but I got one of the gaseous figure. It is said to have been spotted in the Raw Empire the same day I met you," she said, showing Lily a picture of the gaseous figure, and it looked just like the one from Lily's dream. "Phantom Cat," Lily said in horror, which confused Lupina. "A friend of yours?" Lupina asked, in which Lily just nodded in response. Although Phantom's design was obviously his, she wasn't sure who could have been the mermaid if that were the case. It could be anyone else of the 5 others who participated in the play test. Although, now that this was all starting to become clear, she finally faced 2 very important truths. The first one with this world that she thought to be a video game was no game, but was somehow the real world. The reason she couldn't log out was because she wasn't logged into any game. She was transferred into the reality of the game. She wasn't sure how this was possible, but here she was in the world of Guardian Tales. The second truth was that what she saw while passed out was not a dream, but instead was some sort of memory of hers. She knew it couldn't have been from the past few days as it didn't fit into that timeline. But she remembered Ashley talking a bit about the world looping once before, but couldn't remember all the details of it. So this memory must have been from a previous loop. If that were true, that would mean that she, Ashley, Phantom, Ion, Erica, and Glitchy were all in great danger from this unknown foe. Now that Lily knew that this world was real, she knew that a war was coming. Against the entirety of Titus was Beth and the invaders, and against the players was this violent cleric. And although Lily knew that these battles were coming soon, she was nowhere near prepared to fight any of the foes that were to come.